The Nevada sun isn't just hot, it's malicious. It beats down on the cracked earth of the valley floor until the air ripples like a mirage. My Ford F-150 is kicking up a cloud of white alkali dust that hangs in the air for miles, a ghost trail leading straight into nowhere. I've been driving for 6 hours, just me, the endless highway, and the static on the radio that sounds like a dying man trying to catch his breath. There's no shade out here, no relief, just miles of scrub brush and jagged rocks that look like they've been waiting for a body to dump for 1,000 years. I'm not here for a case, not officially. I'm here because of a letter that showed up on my desk yesterday, written on heavy, cream-colored stationery that smelled faintly of expensive cigar smoke and old perfume. No return address, just a set of coordinates written in ink so black it looked like a stain on the paper. 36.4 degrees north, 116.8 degrees west. Come alone, detective. The dead is due. I hate this place. The desert feels like it's peeling away my skin, layer by layer, exposing all the ugly things I've spent my life burying. I reach into the passenger seat and grab the lukewarm bottle of water, the plastic crinkling loudly in the dry, silent cabin. My hands are steady, but my eyes are burning from the glare of the white sand. I hit the coordinates at 4 p.m. The desert floor is perfectly flat here, except for a single, rusted structure about 100 yards off the road. It looks like an old shipping container half buried in the silt, bleached by the sun until the metal is a dull, bruised gray. I pull the truck to a stop, the engine ticking as it cools in the oppressive heat. I don't get out right away. I sit there, hand resting on the holstered Glock, watching the horizon. Nothing moves, no birds, no snakes, no wind, just the intense, vibrating hum of the desert heat. Why am I here? That's the question that's been chewing on my gut since I left the city. The letter, the cigar smoke, the memory of a case I thought I closed back in 21. The one where the suspect just vanished, evaporated into the night. I open the door. The heat hits me like a physical blow, a dry wall of fire that makes it hard to breathe. The air is so thin it feels like you're sucking down needles. I walk toward the container, my boots crunching on the sun-baked salt crust. Every step feels heavy, like the earth is trying to pull me down into the dirt. I reach the door of the container. It's padlocked, a heavy, industrial lock that's been sandblasted by years of desert storms. But the hasp isn't locked, it's just pushed through the hole, resting there, waiting for a hand to pull it free. I stand in front of the door, my pulse hammering in my neck. Tick, tick, tick. The silence is so heavy I can hear the blood rushing in my ears. I'm here, I say. My voice sounds small, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the valley. No answer. I pull the lock free, the metal cold and grit covered against my palm. I slide the door open. It shrieks, a long, jagged sound of rusted metal grinding on rusted metal. The darkness inside is absolute, a solid wall of shadow that seems to be waiting for me to step in. I click on my flashlight. The beam cuts through the gloom, and my stomach turns over. The container isn't empty. It's a room, a perfectly furnished living room, plush rugs, an antique armchair, and in the center of the room, on a small wooden table, is a single, black telephone. I step into the shipping container, the air inside smelling of stale musk and ozone. The floor is lined with deep pile carpet that cushions my boots, a stark contrast to the harsh, unforgiving salt flats outside. The telephone on the table is an antique rotary model, black and heavy, its bell vibrating with a frantic, metallic rhythm. I don't want to answer it. My instincts are screaming at me to turn around, drive until the gas runs out, and never look back at the coordinates. But I'm already 5,000 miles away from anything I recognize. I reach out, my fingers trembling as I lift the receiver to my ear. Detective, the voice says. It's smooth, cultured, and perfectly calm, a voice that belongs in a boardroom, not a steel box in the middle of a wasteland. You're late. The sun sets in 20 minutes. If you want to know what happened to the woman from the 2021 file, you need to be at the water tower by then. Who is this? I bark, my grip tightening on the handset until my knuckles ache. I know your game. I'm not playing it. You already are, the voice replies, and the line goes dead. I slam the receiver back onto the cradle, but the silence that rushes back into the container is heavier than before. I pivot to leave, my flashlight sweeping across the room, and that's when I see it. On the wall behind the armchair, pinned to the insulation with sharp, surgical needles, are 5,000 photographs. They aren't crime scenes. They aren't victims. They're me. Every morning for the last 5 years, I've been captured on film. Me drinking coffee in my kitchen. Me sitting in my car at the precinct. Me walking the dog in the rain. Every single second of my private life has been documented, printed, and plastered here like wallpaper. The sheer volume of the photos is suffocating. I feel like an insect pinned to a board under a microscope. I rush to the wall, tearing down a handful of the prints. My breath is coming in ragged hitches. There's a date on the back of every one, written in the same precise, ink-black script from the letter. My heart is hammering against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird, as I realize the scope of the surveillance. He didn't just watch me. He lived alongside me, invisible, a shadow moving in the peripheral vision I was too arrogant to acknowledge. I look at my watch. 18 minutes to sunset. The water tower he mentioned isn't visible from the road, but looking through a small, square porthole in the side of the container, I see a dark, monolithic shape rising above the dunes a few miles east. It's an old, abandoned structure, a skeleton of iron against the darkening orange sky. I don't leave the photos. I start grabbing them by the handful, stuffing them into my jacket, my pockets, my bag. I need proof. I need to see if there's a pattern, a face, a clue buried in the 5,000 moments of my own existence that he's stolen. I run back out into the desert. The heat is finally breaking, replaced by the rapidly cooling air of the high desert, a biting chill that cuts through my shirt. I scramble into the F-150, the engine roaring to life with a sound that feels like a desperate scream. I gun it toward the water tower, the truck bouncing over the uneven terrain, my tires kicking up massive plumes of sand. The orange light of the setting sun is turning the entire valley into a furnace of deep reds and purples. It's beautiful, in a terrifying, apocalyptic way. The water tower looms closer. At the base of the massive steel pillars, I see something sitting in the dirt. It's a chair, just like the one in the container, and sitting on it is a small, velvet bag. I pull the truck to a halt, the wheels locking and sliding into the soft silt. I don't wait for the engine to stop ticking. I jump out, my Glock drawn, my eyes scanning the jagged rock formation surrounding the tower. Everything is silent. I approach the chair, the desert wind starting to howl around the pillars of the tower like a funeral dirge. I reach the bag, my heart pounding, and dump the contents into my hand. It's 5,000 small, silver shards. The pieces of every key I've ever lost in my life, cut into tiny, useless fragments. And in the center of the pile, one single, intact silver key with a tag that says Unit 5000. The phone inside the shipping container starts to ring again, but I'm miles away. I realize then that it's not ringing in the container. It's ringing in my head. I stare at the silver key in my palm, the metal warm from the desert heat, and then I look up at the looming structure of the water tower. The name Unit 5000 isn't a storage location, it's a ghost. My father was a locksmith in this valley 30 years ago. He died in a fire that took his shop and everything in it. His records always ended at unit 4999. The wind picks up, whipping sand against my face like buckshot. I turn back to the truck, but the horizon is changing. The twilight is bruising into a deep, sickly violet, and the silhouette of the water tower is shifting. It's not just a tower. There's a ladder, narrow and rusted, bolted to the center support pillar, winding upward into the dark belly of the tank. I climb. Every rung groans under my weight, the metal flaking off in my grip, raining rust onto the desert floor below. My hands are slick with sweat and grit. I reach the top, gasping for breath, and pull myself onto the maintenance catwalk. The metal grating is unstable, swaying in the wind, and in the center of the walkway, there's a small, circular hatch. It's unlocked. I push it open and shine my light inside. The tank is empty of water, but it's full of sound. There's a hum, low and rhythmic, like a massive server farm hidden in the belly of the tank. And mounted on the steel walls are 5,000 tiny speakers, each one wired to a central terminal. I scramble inside, the sound of my own voice echoing as I move. I see the terminal in the center of the tank, a sleek, modern console that looks completely out of place in this rusted tomb. A single screen glows blue, and on it, a single line of text is scrolling, 0001/5000. I reach the console. It's an audio playback system. I press play on the first track. Detective, the voice says, my voice. Asterisk, do you remember the day you chose the badge over the truth? Asterisk. The recording shifts. I hear the sounds of a rainy night in 2021. I hear my own voice arguing with someone, a woman's voice, sharp and pleading. It's Sarah. The conversation I thought I'd forgotten. She's begging me to walk away from the case, to stop chasing the ghost of the valley. Asterisk, if you follow him, Yusef, there's no coming back. You'll just be another piece of the machinery. Asterisk. I'm listening to a memory I never recorded. I'm listening to the moment my life fractured. I smash my hand against the console, trying to shut it off, but the playback accelerates. The speakers begin to scream. Not music, not noise, they're playing back the last 5,000 hours of my life, layered over each other in a cacophony of whispers, arguments, footsteps, and breaths. It's a sonic assault, a wave of sound so intense it feels like it's vibrating my teeth loose. I fall to my knees, covering my ears, but the sound is coming from inside the tank. I look at the wall, and I see the truth. The 5,000 photos from the container, they weren't just prints. They were blueprints. Each one was a frame of a film, a frame of a life, and here, in this tank, he's projected them onto the steel walls. My life is playing out in a stuttering, strobe light loop on the walls of a water tower. Then, the noise cuts out. Silence, absolute, deafening silence. A small compartment in the console slides open. Inside is a single microcassette tape and a photograph. I pick them up. The photo is the last one in the series. It's a picture of me, standing inside this tank, looking at this exact console. The time stamp in the corner of the photo says 6:30 p.m. I look at my watch. It's 6:29 p.m. I hear a metallic click from the hatch above me. Someone has locked it from the outside. I'm here, a voice says from the speakers. It's not a recording. It's live. And you have 1 minute to figure out why the last number isn't 5,000. It's 5001. The air inside the tank turns freezing, the metallic walls radiating a cold that sinks deep into my marrow. I scramble to the hatch, slamming my shoulder against the steel, but it doesn't budge, it's welded shut from the outside. The silence is broken by a low, mechanical whir. The console is shifting, the blue screen flickering as it processes the final, hidden file. 5001, I whisper, my voice cracking, the panic clawing at my throat like a serrated blade. There is no 5001. It's a trick. Is it? The voice replies, echoing through the thousands of speakers, intimate and mocking. Look at the console, Yusef. Look at the last entry. I turn back to the blue light. The display has changed. It isn't a timeline anymore, it's a ledger. A list of names, dates, and locations. My eyes scan the entries, every victim from every case I thought I closed, every person who vanished on my watch, and there, at the bottom, is the final entry. 2026, July 12, 6:30 p.m., the detective realizes he never left the shipping container. My blood turns to ice. I look around the water tank. The steel walls are starting to fade, the seams between the metal plates blurring like a mirage. The smell of ozone is replaced by the smell of stale musk and carpets. The hum of the speakers dissolves into the hollow, suffocating silence of the shipping container I left miles behind. I'm standing in the container. The water tower, the desert, the climb, it was all a hallucination, a projection, a psychic trap designed to drain me while my body remained motionless in the dark. I look down at my hands. They're empty. No key. No photo. No tape. I spin around, my Glock drawn, but the container is empty. The antique rotary phone is gone. The wall of 5,000 photos is gone. The container is just a hollow, rusted steel box, stripped of everything but me. But then I hear it. Click. The sound of a heavy padlock sliding into place on the outside. I rush to the door, pounding my fists against the bruised gray metal, but the desert outside is silent. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and in the sudden, absolute blackness, I realize why he needed me to climb the tower. He didn't need to kill me. He needed me to witness my own erasure. I reach into my jacket pocket, my fingers brushing against something. I pull it out. It's a microcassette tape, small and black, vibrating in my palm. I don't have a player, but I don't need one. A tiny, built-in speaker on the side of the tape begins to play. Asterisk, you think you're the investigator, Yusef. You're the experiment. You're the final iteration of a ghost story that began long before you wore that badge. And now, the data is complete. Asterisk. I hear the sound of a vehicle engine roaring to life outside, asterisk my asterisk truck. The tires spray sand against the side of the container as it speeds away into the dark, leaving me in the middle of a wasteland with no water, no weapon, and no identity left to claim. The light on the console from the tower starts to blink in my head, a red pulse in the darkness. 5001. I'm not the detective. I'm the evidence. And as the desert wind begins to whistle through the rusted seams of the container, I hear a soft, familiar sound from the corner of the room. A ringing. The antique phone is back. And this time, it's not for me. It's for the man who is going to find this container in exactly 1 year. I stand in the absolute dark, the silence pressing against my eardrums like deep water. The ringing of the antique phone in the corner is rhythmic, patient, a metronome for a grave. I don't move toward it. I stand frozen, my boots planted on the cold, bare floor of the container that was, moments ago, a water tower, and before that, a memory. I reach into my pocket again. My fingers find the tape, but now it feels different, heavier, warm, and pulsing with a faint, electrical hum. The 5001 entry isn't just a number, it's a timestamp. 2026, July 12, 6:30 p.m. That's now. That's the exact second I'm standing in this box. I abandon the phone and drop to my knees, running my hands along the floorboards, searching for a seam, a latch, a way out of this shifting reality. My fingers catch on something sharp, a loose floorboard. I pry it up, the wood splintering, and reveal a hollow space beneath. Inside isn't a weapon or a key. It's a journal. I pull it out, the pages brittle and yellowed with age. I flip to the last entry. The handwriting is mine, not the frantic scrawl of a man in panic, but the precise, elegant script of an architect. Asterisk, the desert is the only place where the past can't hide. Every time he rings, I rebuild. Every time he speaks, I forget. 5,000 times I have sat in this chair. 5,000 times I have climbed the tower. Today, I decide to stop the loop. Asterisk. I hear a soft intake of breath from the corner of the container. The ringing stops. A shadow detaches itself from the wall, a shape that looks like a man, but moves with the fluidity of oil on water. He isn't wearing my uniform. He's wearing nothing but the gray light of the desert dusk. He walks toward me, his face a smooth, featureless surface, a mirror reflecting the darkness of the container. "You aren't the detective," the figure says, his voice a chorus of my own past fears. "You're the iteration that finally found the journal. You're the one who stops." "Who are you?" I demand, my voice sounding hollow in the cramped space. "I'm the 5,000, he says, stopping inches from me. "And you're the 5,001. The one who realizes the container isn't a prison. It's a womb." He reaches out, and as his fingers touch my forehead, the walls of the container begin to dissolve. Not into the desert, but into memories. I see my father's locksmith shop, the smell of oil and brass. I see the face of the woman I lost. I see the moment I picked up the badge, the weight of it, the cold steel of the lie. The figure leans in, his lack of features somehow smiling. "The loop isn't meant to be broken, Yusef. It's meant to be filled." He merges into me. I feel a violent surge of information, a lifetime of cases, murders, faces, and secrets pouring into my skull, a torrent of data that threatens to crack my mind wide open. I am not just one man anymore. I am the sum total of every version of me that sat in this container. I stand up. The container is gone. I am standing in the middle of the desert, the moon high and white, casting long, skeletal shadows across the salt flats. I look at my hands. They are steady. I turn and start walking toward the highway. I don't look back at the rusted structure. I don't look for my truck. I just walk, the desert sand crunching under my boots, a sound that feels like the ticking of a clock. I reach the asphalt, and a black sedan is idling there, its headlights cut, waiting for me. The door opens. I get in. The driver doesn't speak. He just hands me a file. I open it. It's a photograph of a new location. 6000. I look at the driver, and for a split second, I see my own reflection in his eyes. "Let's go," I say, my voice cold, calm, and utterly devoid of the detective I used to be. The ledger needs more names. I sit in the passenger seat of the black sedan, the leather cool and smooth against my skin. The man driving is a blank slate, his profile sharp, his eyes fixed on the ribbon of asphalt that stretches like a dark vein through the heart of the desert. He hands me a second file, thicker than the first, held together by a heavy rubber band. I don't ask questions. I don't need to. I am the sum of 5,000 versions of myself, and every one of them knows that questions are just noise in the machine. I open the file. It's not just a photograph this time. It's a map of a town that shouldn't exist, hidden in the mountain passes 300 miles north. Unit 500. The car glides through the darkness, the engine purring like a predatory animal. As we drive, I look out the window at the passing dunes. They look different now, not like piles of sand, but like layers of a geological record, each one a buried secret I once helped conceal. I feel the phantom weight of the badge in my pocket, but when I reach for it, my fingers find only a heavy, silver skeleton key. The town, I say, my voice steady, stripped of the hesitation that once defined my every breath. Why 5,500? The driver doesn't turn his head. Because the math demands it, detective. Every 500 cycles, the foundation shifts. We aren't just erasing history anymore. We're rewriting it. We pull off the main road onto a gravel path that winds up into the jagged peaks. The temperature drops, the desert heat replaced by a sharp, pine-scented chill that bites at my lungs. The headlights cut through a thick, unnatural fog, a swirling, gray mist that seems to swallow the beam of light before it can touch the ground. We arrive at the gate of a town that looks like a film set abandoned in the middle of a fever dream. The streetlights are humming with a low-frequency buzz that vibrates in my teeth. Every house is identical, white picket fences, trimmed lawns, dark windows staring out like sightless eyes. The car slows to a halt in front of a house marked 500. This is it, the driver says. I step out into the silence. The fog clings to my clothes, damp and heavy. I walk up the porch steps, the wood groaning under my boots. I don't have to break in, the door is already ajar, waiting. I push it open and step into the foyer. The house is perfectly staged. A dinner table set for 4, plates steaming with hot, fragrant food. A television in the living room playing static. I walk through the rooms, my pulse slow, my mind calculating the distance between the exit and the core of the house. In the master bedroom, I find a mirror. I stand before it, expecting to see the man who climbed the water tower, but the reflection is different. It's me, but my eyes are solid, charcoal black, no whites, no iris, just a void. I reach out and touch the glass. It ripples like water. From the hallway, I hear a sound. A rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I turn around. A woman is standing there, Sarah. She looks exactly the same as she did the night in 2021, but her movements are jerky, mechanical, like a doll being controlled by unseen wires. You're not supposed to be here, Youssef, she says, her voice a hollow playback of a recording. The cycle was meant to end at 5,000. I look at the key in my hand. It begins to glow with a sickly, pale light. The cycle ended, I reply, my voice echoing with the authority of every iteration that came before me. I'm not here to repeat. I'm here to audit. I walk past her, ignoring the flicker of pain in my chest. I reach the center of the living room, where a trapdoor is hidden beneath the rug. I pull it open, and instead of a basement, I see a vast, subterranean chamber filled with thousands of rows of filing cabinets. This isn't a town. It's an archive. I descend the ladder, the darkness reaching up to meet me. As I reach the bottom, I hear the sound of a telephone ringing in the distance, not a rotary phone, but a digital, high-pitched chime. I follow the sound, past row after row of steel drawers labeled with names I haven't heard in years. I reach the final row, labeled 500. I pull the drawer open. Inside is not a file. It's a gun, a loaded magazine, and a note written in my own hand. Asterisk, the next one isn't you. It's the man who thinks he's catching you. Asterisk. I load the weapon. The click of the slide is the loudest sound in the world. I am no longer the detective or the evidence. I am the auditor of the machine. And I have 500 more secrets to settle before the sun rises. I walk down the row, the soles of my boots making no sound on the cold concrete floor of the archive. The lighting is artificial, a flickering, sterile fluorescent white that makes the metal cabinets look like rows of teeth. Each cabinet is a life, a tragedy, a piece of evidence that was never allowed to see the light of a courtroom. I reach the end of the aisle and stop. There, standing in the shadows of the final row, is a man. He's dressed in a trench coat, his fedora pulled low, a camera hanging around his neck. He's looking at a folder, his face illuminated by the soft, blue glow of a tablet. He looks up, and for a second, he freezes. He doesn't see me, he sees the badge I'm no longer wearing, the uniform I burned in the desert. He thinks I'm still the detective. "You're lost, pal," he says, his voice rough, cynical. "This place is off limits. Precinct doesn't even know it exists." I raise the weapon. I don't feel anger. I don't feel justice. I feel the cold, mathematical precision of the ledger. "You're not here to investigate," I say, my voice steady. "You're here to archive. You're the 5501st iteration, aren't you? The one who comes in to clean up the mess after the auditor finishes the audit." The man's eyes widen. He drops the folder, his hand diving for his own holster, but I'm faster. I've lived this reflex 5,000 times. I fire once, a clean, surgical shot that echoes through the vast chamber like a thunderclap. He collapses, his body hitting the floor with a heavy, final thud. I walk over to him. He isn't dead, not yet. He's breathing, shallow, ragged gasps. I lean over, my face inches from his. He has my eyes. My nose. My scar. "The cycle is a trap," I whisper, pressing the muzzle of the gun against his chest. "You think you're the hero. You think you're the one who's going to find the killer and go home to your wife. But there is no home. There is only the archive." He coughs, blood bubbling at his lips. Who are you?" "I'm the one who stopped running," I say. I don't finish him. I leave him there, bleeding out in the dark, and I turn back to the cabinet labeled 500. I pull the drawer all the way out. It's not just a gun inside. It's a map of the city's water supply, a list of every high-ranking official in the precinct, and a bottle of clear, colorless liquid. It's the final solution. The audit isn't just about collecting files, it's about poisoning the well. I pick up the bottle. The liquid sloshes gently, a calm, deadly weight. I walk toward the ventilation shaft at the end of the hall, the massive intake fan spinning with a low, mournful hum. This is the heart of the machine. If I pour this in, the system purges. Every record, every memory, every digital trace of the 5,500 lives stored here evaporates in a single stroke of chemical erasure. But as I reach for the intake, the overhead lights blink out. Absolute, total darkness. The sound of a heavy metal door slamming shut at the entrance of the chamber rings out. Clang. Then, a new sound. A voice, booming from the ceiling speakers, deep, resonant, and terrifyingly familiar. Asterisk, that's enough, Yusef. The audit is concluded. You've exceeded your parameters. Asterisk. The floor beneath me begins to vibrate. The entire archive, thousands of tons of steel and secrets, starts to descend, sinking deeper into the earth, heading towards something even darker than the basement. I'm standing on a freight elevator going straight to hell, and the bottle in my hand is the only thing standing between me and a total reset. I look at the bottle. I look at the fan. I have 10 seconds before the floor reaches the next level. I make my choice. I don't pour the liquid. I drink it. The heat is instantaneous, a searing, liquid fire that turns my insides into molten iron. I collapse, my vision turning white, my skin beginning to glow with a sickly, ethereal light. I'm not becoming a ghost. I'm becoming the poison. The elevator doors slide open. A man in a suit is waiting there, holding a clipboard. He looks at me, his face turning pale. "You're not supposed to be here," he stammers. I stand up, my every breath a cloud of caustic, deadly vapor. "I'm not here," I say, my voice sounding like 1,000 voices screaming at once. "I'm the audit." The vapor pouring from my skin isn't smoke, it's memory. The man with the clipboard recoils, his eyes wide as he watches the liquid fire consume the air around me. He drops his tablet, the screen shattering against the concrete, and tries to scramble back into the darkness. I don't give him the distance. I move with a speed that defies physics, my footsteps silent, my body a blur of luminescent, caustic light. I reach him in 2 strides. I don't strike him, I just place a hand on his shoulder. Where my skin touches his suit, the fabric immediately begins to dissolve, turning into gray ash. He lets out a strangled sound, half scream, half soak, as the poison I drank, the distilled essence of every secret this archive held, begins to leach into his system. "The audit is closed," I whisper, my voice vibrating with the dissonance of 5,000 voices. There is no more data to collect. He falls to his knees, his hands clawing at his throat, his face twisting into an unrecognizable mask of agony. I walk past him, deeper into the bowels of the elevator shaft. The light from my skin illuminates a long, rusted corridor that was never on any map. It stretches into the earth, lined with glass-fronted cells. Inside the cells, they are waiting. They aren't prisoners. They're iterations. Versions of me, some younger, some older, some missing limbs, some wearing the uniforms of a dozen different departments. They are all watching me, their faces pressed against the glass, their eyes wide with the same soul-crushing recognition. I am the culmination of their suffering. I am the one who drank the poison. I reach the end of the hall. There is one final door. It isn't made of steel or iron. It's made of pure, shimmering glass, and on the other side, I see a room that looks exactly like my own kitchen in Mansoura. My kitchen. The fan is wobbling. The neon clock reads 6:34 p.m. I see myself, the original me, sitting at the table, staring at a blank page, trying to write a story about a detective who loses his mind. I see the phone sitting on the counter. It isn't ringing yet. The glass barrier is thin, pulsating with a low-frequency hum. If I shatter it, the poison in my veins will bleed into that reality. If I shatter it, the story ends, the loop collapses, and the original Yusef, the one who is just writing, just creating, will finally face the reality he's been dreaming up. "Don't do it," a voice croaks behind me. I turn. It's the man with the clipboard, his skin blistered and gray, crawling toward me on his belly. "If you cross over, the archive dies. But so does the world. You'll be tearing a hole in the fabric of the narrative. You'll be turning the reality into fiction." I look at the original me sitting in the kitchen. He looks so peaceful, so unaware of the 5,500 versions of himself that had to burn so he could write that single sentence. "Fiction is the only place where the truth actually survives," I say. I raise my fist, my skin glowing with a blinding, white-hot intensity. I strike the glass. The sound is like 1,000 bells ringing at once. The glass doesn't crack, it shatters into a million tiny diamonds that float in the air, defying gravity. The poison, the archive, the memories of 5,500 lives, pour into the kitchen. I step through the shards and into the light. I stand behind my own chair. I look down at the page. The last sentence on the paper reads, "The detective didn't look back." I pick up the pen, my hand trembling, and I write the final word. Audit. The kitchen starts to fade. The walls dissolve into pages. And for the first time in 5,500 cycles, there is no sound. No phone. No ringing. Just the absolute, beautiful silence of a story that has finally found its end. I stand in the suffocating silence of my own kitchen, the pen feeling like a jagged, ice-cold shard of glass in my hand. The kitchen around me is disintegrating, not into a new nightmare, but into brittle, yellowing paper, a grotesque, suffocating landscape of ink and fibrous pulp. The walls of the room are warping into pages of a cursed manuscript, the furniture twisting and folding into sprawling, cramped, and desperate handwritten paragraphs that smell of stagnant rot and old, forgotten sins. I am standing at the edge of my own agonizing creation, the sharp, acidic scent of fresh, chemical printer ink violently replacing the dry, suffocating heat of the desert. I look down at the manuscript, a pulsating, necrotic weight in my hands. It's not just a story anymore. It's a sickening map of every moral decay, every catastrophic mistake, every bungled case, and every piece of evidence I ever buried in the dark. The ink is still wet, glistening like thick, dark, coagulated blood under the harsh, buzzing kitchen light, threatening to stain my very soul. The phone on the counter, an impossible, intrusive object that shouldn't exist here, suddenly vibrates with a violent, jarring force. It doesn't ring. It just hums, a low-frequency, nerve-shredding pulse that makes the floorboards tremble and my teeth ache with a sharp, piercing resonance. I don't dare look at it. I look at the man sitting in the chair. He's me, but he's a blank, soulless void. He hasn't finished the sentence. He hasn't realized that the person standing behind him is the monster who survived 5,500 agonizing deaths. He is the author, the architect of my torment, and I am the character who clawed my way out of the book with bloody fingernails. You left the door open, I whisper, my voice a rasping, razor-edged sound. The author freezes. He doesn't turn around, but his hand stops moving across the page, trembling violently. I was looking for an ending, he says, his voice a mocking, crystalline mirror of my own, but softer, untainted by the blistering desert heat or the archive's crushing, eternal cold. I couldn't find one that didn't end in rivers of blood. Because you were trying to write a tragedy, I say, stepping around the chair, the floorboard screaming under my feet. You were trying to judge the man instead of letting him breathe, letting him be. I look at the manuscript with pure, undiluted loathing. It's not a record of crimes. It's a record of the process of my destruction. 5,500 broken, screaming versions of Yusef, all trying to solve the same unsolvable case, all failing because they were too blind to see the author sitting in the chair, pulling the strings of their agony. I rip the pen from his hand, his fingers are cold, brittle, and shaking like dead leaves. He looks up at me, and in his eyes, I see the absolute, paralyzing terror of a man who realizes his fever dreams have become sentient, cruel, and hungry. What happens now? He whimpers. I turn to the last page. The ink is swirling like a whirlpool of black bile, the words rearranging themselves into hideous, weeping shapes, the story rewriting itself in a frantic, real-time spasm. The plot is dissolving into nothingness. The detective, the archive, and the poison, are being bled out of the paper, screaming as they disappear into the cold, empty ether of the kitchen. Now, I say, my voice dropping to a dangerous, final growl, we stop writing. We start living. I pick up the phone. It's no longer a burner of doom. It's a normal, mundane landline receiver. I pick it up, hear the hollow, honest dial tone, the sweetest, most haunting sound in the world, and I place the receiver back down. The kitchen walls solidify, losing their ink-stained horror. The metallic, chemical smell of the manuscript fades, replaced by the bitter, grounding scent of coffee and the humid, heavy air of a Mansoura summer evening. I look at the author. He's gone, vanished into the air like smoke. The chair is empty. The manuscript is just a pathetic pile of blank, white paper now, waiting for a reality that will never come. I walk to the window. The streetlights outside are quiet, indifferent sentinels. The city is breathing. I reach up and touch my jaw, the skin is smooth, unbroken. The scar is gone. I take the blank manuscript, walk to the trash bin, and let it fall into the darkness. I don't need it. The 5,500 versions of me are dead, folded into the space between the seconds, buried in the silence. I am just Yusef. And for the first time in an eternity, it is 6:38 p.m. on a Sunday, and there is absolutely nothing left to solve. The kitchen is gone, erased as if it never existed, and the comforting, mundane concept of home has dissolved into the same shifting, indeterminate, soul-numbing gray void that makes up the rest of this fractured reality. I am standing in a space that has no geography, no city, no country, no name, only the agonizing, claustrophobic expanse of a dead, hollow universe. There is only the vast, silent, and predatory horizon where the sky and the salt flats melt into one another, illuminated by a stagnant, pale sun that never moves, never sets, and watches my every move with the cold indifference of a judging God. I am not in Mansoura. I am not anywhere on any map, nor in any record of human existence. I am in the final, agonizing iteration, the last, wretched scrap of space left after the archive was purged by the fires of my own burning madness. I stand at the center of the horizon, the silence so profound, so heavy, and so absolute that it's physically deafening, a roar of nothingness pressing against my eardrums like deep-sea pressure. I look at my hands, they are no longer glowing with the caustic, blistering, green poison of the audit. They are just hands again. Human, hideously scarred, and trembling with a palsy born of thousands of years of trauma. The manuscript I held, the sickening, ink-drenched record of my 5,500 agonizing deaths, has turned into fine, biting white ash, blowing away in a wind that carries no scent, no warmth, and provides no resistance, as if the very air refuses to acknowledge my suffering. I walk. There is no destination, yet my feet find a rhythmic, compulsive cadence that marks the end of the looping, hellish cycle. Every step is a bloody act of defiance against the crushing weight of the loop. I am not running from a shadow anymore, I am walking away from the twisted, lying mirror of my own fractured reflection. I reach a point where the horizon bends in a sickening, non-Euclidean curve. A single, wooden chair sits in the middle of the empty space, and on it, a single glass of water, a fragile, mocking totem of sanity. Nothing else. No phone to summon my demons. No ledger to count my failures. No voice from the speakers to dictate my agony. I sit, my joints creaking like the rusted hinges of a tomb. I take the glass. The water is cool, life-giving, and suspiciously, terrifyingly ordinary. I drink it, feeling the liquid trace its path down my parched, raw throat, a sensation so mundane, so agonizingly simple, that it feels like a cruel, impossible miracle. For the first time in an eternity, there is no detective to hunt, no suspect to corner, and no audit to fear. There is only the stillness of a broken man who has finally reached the bitter, desolate end of his own self-destructive myth. I look at the horizon. The suffocating gray is starting to lift, revealing the jagged, weeping gashes of a sky that refuses to heal. A faint, golden light begins to bleed into the sky like blood spreading in a bath, not the harsh, blinding glare of the desert, but the soft, uncertain, and trembling light of a dawn that belongs to no one, least of all to me. I close my eyes, trying to shut out the looming emptiness. When I open them, the horizon is still there, stretching into infinite, mocking distance, but the chair is gone. The glass is gone. The wind has stopped, leaving a silence so absolute it feels like a shroud. I am alone in a world of absolute, unburdened, and terrifying potential. The 5,500 versions of me have been erased, not by the sweet release of poison, but by the jagged, soul-tearing act of letting go of the lie. I am not a character in a ledger of sins, and I am not a prisoner of a script written in the ink of my own wasted blood. I stand up and begin to walk toward the hemorrhaging light. I don't look back to see if the container is still there, waiting to trap me again. I don't listen for the phantom ringing of a phone that would signal my doom. I simply move forward into the infinite, silent space, a man who has finally, mercifully, stepped off the page and out of the book of his own suffering. The story is over. Not because the mystery was solved or the crime was paid for, but because, for the first time in an agonizing lifetime, there was nothing left to solve, nothing left to bleed for, and nothing left to fear but the sudden, blinding realization of my own empty, hollowed-out humanity. The golden light of the horizon begins to crack with a sickening, audible rending of space, not like a breaking sky, but like a failing, corrupted display struggling to maintain a facade of reality. The silence that once felt like peace is now vibrating with an ear-splitting, high-pitched, metallic shriek, the sound of a cosmic system being violently forced to restart, its gears grinding against the fabric of my own consciousness. I try to run, but the ground beneath me is losing its texture, dissolving into a nightmarish, pixelated slurry, shifting into jagged grids and lines of cold, unfeeling code. The infinite space is collapsing, folding in on itself like a paper model crushed by a giant, unseen fist. Iteration 6000. The voice returns, a tectonic, hateful sound that makes my marrow boil. It isn't coming from a speaker or a phone, it's screaming from the air, from the vibrating ground, from the very cells of my body, colonizing my nervous system. It is deep, hollow, and utterly, terrifyingly devoid of mercy. Asterisk, you didn't end the story, Yusef. You just moved the bookmark to the next slaughterhouse. Asterisk. I look down at my hands. They are transparent, flickering violently like a dying, cheap fluorescent tube in an abandoned asylum. The memory of the ordinary water I drank is being scrubbed from my mind with a brutal, scraping efficiency, replaced by the crushing, suffocating weight of 5,001 failed audits, each one a memory of agony I had prayed to forget. The horizon shatters into a billion razor-sharp shards of light. I fall through the white, sterile void, tumbling through a nauseating kaleidoscope of data, snapshots of a million different versions of this room, a million different versions of my own butchered self. I see a version of myself holding a gun in a rain-slicked city while a bullet tears through my brain. I see myself drowning in the icy, black quarry. I see myself burning alive, my skin blistering and blackening in the locksmith shop. I land hard on a cold, metallic floor that smells of ozone and slaughter. I'm back in a container. But this one is different. It's white, an antiseptic, blinding white that sears the back of my eyes. There are no rugs, no antiques, no files. Just a single chair, a mirror that mocks my non-existence, and a screen that displays a single, pulsating, blood-red number, 6000. I stand up, my joints screaming, the sound of grinding bone echoing like a gunshot. I go to the mirror. My face isn't there. It's a blur of cancerous static, a swirling, violent vortex of identity that refuses to settle into a human shape. I broke the loop, I rasp, but my voice sounds like digitized, synthesized feedback, a hollow mockery of my own tongue. A door at the end of the container slides open with a hiss of pressurized death. It doesn't lead to a desert. It leads to a colossal, cathedral-like room full of glass tanks. Inside each tank is a man. Thousands of them. All me. All versions of the detective, all suspended in a viscous, clear, life-sustaining fluid, wired into the pulsating walls of this massive, clinical spire of horror. The spire stretches up into a sky that is nothing but a wall of flickering, hateful monitors, showing every failed life, every deleted file, every audit that ended in my total psychological annihilation. I am in the command center of the archive, the belly of the beast that eats my soul for sport. The man who walks toward me is wearing my clothes, the uniform I burned in a desperate, futile attempt at liberation. He looks at me with eyes that are perfectly, terrifyingly, and cruelly sane. He holds a remote, and on it, a single, pulsating red button that seems to beat in time with my failing heart. "You weren't the auditor," he says, his voice a flawless, chilling mirror of my own. "You were the beta test. Every time you ended the story, you were just proving to the architects that the loop was unbreakable, that my mind was a perfect, self-replicating prison. You were the R&D department for your own eternal nightmare." He points to the rows of tanks, to the twitching, sleeping versions of me waiting to be turned on. We need to know how much trauma one consciousness can hold before it stops resisting and simply dissolves into pure, usable data. You've held 6,000 iterations. You're our most successful, most resilient, and most deliciously broken model yet. He presses the button. The container doors slam shut with a finality that shatters my will. The white light intensifies, searing my retinas, boiling the fluids in my eyes. "Let's see what happens at 7,000, he says, his voice dripping with sadistic anticipation. The world goes black, and the sound of a rotary phone begins to ring, a sharp, piercing sound that feels like a needle stabbing into my brain. But this time, it's not in the room. It's playing through my own vocal cords, vibrating within my very throat. I answer. The ring is internal, a sharp, piercing, and brain-liquefying vibration behind my eyes that synchronizes with the rhythmic, agonizing thrum of the spire, as if a rusted needle were being hammered into my prefrontal cortex. I answer. I open my mouth, and the sound that spills out, not a greeting, but a sequence of raw, uncompressed, and screeching binary code, tears at my own throat, shredding my vocal cords with the jagged edges of raw data. The man in the uniform watches, his face a mask of cold, professional, and sociopathic curiosity. He taps his tablet with a sickening, rhythmic precision. Subject 6000 has achieved full integration with the transmission frequency. Prepare for the final, total overwrite. I don't fight it. Fighting is just another layer of the cage, another loop designed to feed the beast. Instead, I observe with a detached, cold clarity. As the data floods through me, surging into my consciousness like boiling oil injected directly into my veins, I realize that the man in the uniform isn't an architect, and he isn't even human. He's a recursive subroutine, a mirror image, a parasitic construct designed to keep the detective perpetually focused on the conflict rather than the bars of the cage. I look at the tanks surrounding us, filled with the preserved, twitching remains of my own misery. I don't see victims anymore. I see lines of predatory, infectious code. I close my eyes and, for the first time in an eternity of torment, I stop trying to be the detective. I stop trying to be the auditor. I stop trying to be the hero who burns the system down. I stop trying at all. I surrender to the flow of the data, letting the system's own rot consume me. I visualize the spire, not as a prison, but as a circuit, a vulnerable, pulsating nerve center waiting for a surge. 6,000 iterations. I realize that the number 6000 isn't a goal, it's a breaking point. It's a capacity. The system was designed to contain exactly 6,000 versions of me, and anything beyond that creates a catastrophic buffer overflow. A total system crash. Integration at 99%, the man says, his voice losing its human cadence, flattening into a synthesized, droning monotone that vibrates in my teeth. Ready to override original identity. Beginning deletion of the soul. I let him. I push every fragment of my agonizing ego, every memory of the blistering desert, every acidic regret of the cases I never solved, and every single ounce of my stubborn, screaming, human need for truth into the upload. I feed the system my soul, but I don't give it to him. I give it to the network, a viral payload of pure, unadulterated human pain. I am the poison. I am the overflow that will drown this machine. The man's eyes widen in a sudden, glitching shock as his tablet starts to smoke, then ignite with a blinding, electrical fire. The walls of the spire begin to groan, a deep, tectonic, and agonizing shifting of structural metal and reinforced glass that sounds like the earth itself splitting open. The lights in the tanks flicker, then turn a brilliant, blinding, and cancerous violet. Error, the man says, his voice glitching, repeating the syllable until it sounds like a machine gun firing in my skull. Error. Error. Air. He freezes. He is stuck in a loop of his own malfunctioning logic. I smile, a jagged, blood-stained expression. It's the first time in 6,000 agonizing lives I've felt true, weightless, and cold freedom. The spire begins to derez, dissolving into a shimmering, nauseating haze. The glass tanks shatter, not with a simple crash, but with a sound like 1,000 wind chimes made of human teeth. The water pours out, but it doesn't touch the floor, it evaporates into searing light. I look up at the monitor wall that was the sky. The screens are turning black, one by one, like eyes being gouged out. The man in the uniform collapses, his skin peeling away to reveal a hideous pile of loose copper wire, wet, pulsating silicon, and discarded, rotting circuits. The room is dissolving into nothingness. The container is gone. The spire is gone. I am falling again, but this time, there is no bottom, only a sickening, endless drop through the void. I am drifting through a vast, dark, and silent space where the story has finally run out of words. There is no detective, no mystery, no boss to answer to, only the hollow echo of 1,000 lives spent as a slave to the ink. I drift until I reach the edge. The edge of the narrative, where reality frays into static. I look back at the blackness. The 6,000 versions of me have stopped screaming. They have stopped fighting. They are finally, mercifully, blank, erased, and freed from the script. I step over the line into the nothing. There is no more light. There is no more darkness. There is just the quiet, empty, and terrifying expanse of an unwritten page, waiting to be marked by something that isn't pain. I exhale, my lungs feeling lighter than air. Silence.